The original PlayStation is home to many iconic games and series that have spanned a long legacy, and among those series of games there are quite a few that have stood out amongst their peers. And Wipeout 3 Special Edition, originally released in 2000 for the PS1, is definitely one of those titles. Wipeout 3 Special Edition is an upgraded version of the original Wipeout 3 that originally saw release on the console in 1999, and this game included a whole host of upgrades and features, which in most cases wasn't really common for games back then. But just Wipeout 3 was so good and there was so much potential in the game, the developer thought it would be a good fit to have kind of like an all-in-one package where they combined nearly all of the elements from the original two games in the series alongside of all the content that was seen in the original Wipeout 3 game. So for many people that are familiar with the Wipeout series, this special edition of Wipeout 3 is considered to be the definitive version of the game, and it's also considered by many to be most likely the definitive game in the entire Wipeout series across all of the consoles throughout its long and popular history. While Wipeout 3 Special Edition does have a lot of really cool features and upgrades, there are some notable differences, especially with the inclusion of tracks from the original two games in the series, with the first Wipeout and then with Wipeout 2097. And it keeps with the same graphical style of the third game, as at its time on the console, Wipeout 3 was considered to be one of the most visually breathtaking games ever seen on any console. And truthfully, the game still holds up fantastic even to this day. It's such a good looking game. So Wipeout 3 Special Edition expanded upon the original, but also gave you the inclusion of the tracks and features from the first two games also, with many iconic areas to race in that you would have been familiar with if you had played the first two games. Plus there's also elements and secret cheats and modes included where you can access prototype development tracks that didn't make it into the original or final release, which only adds to the longevity of the content that's within the game itself. Wipeout 3 Special Edition is without a doubt a fan favourite among Wipeout enthusiasts. There's so much to offer within the game itself. It's quite crazy the amount of content that's available, and coupled with that, it also has a fantastic soundtrack. For me personally, the Wipeout series, I personally think on the PS1 is definitely the definitive versions or ways to play the games. Now, it doesn't take away from the later entries in the series. They're visually breathtaking, especially when you look at the likes of the PS2 and later consoles. They are fantastic games in their own right, but I personally think that the original Wipeout games on the PlayStation 1 are definitely the defining moment in the series. They just had so much unique appeal, they were way ahead of their time, and it also added to the futuristic premise that was the vibe for the PlayStation during the late 90s, early 2000s, as the PlayStation was one of the first 3D gaming consoles, and truthfully it helped to revolutionise the 3D gaming space, and games with the likes of the original Wipeout and its later sequels only helped to solidify that transformation or that change. And with Wipeout you could clearly see the changes and the direction in which it was going with each sequel as it gradually got better with each iteration of the game being released on the system at that time. It really did push the boundaries of what was possible, and with the likes of Wipeout 3 and even the Special Edition, it was incredible to see a visual masterpiece on a 32-bit console, which was never really thought of at the time. Yes, there were other notable games with the likes of other racers like Gran Turismo and many others, but Wipeout 3 Special Edition and even Wipeout 3 itself definitely stands up there with some of the greatest and most beautiful looking games ever seen on the system for its time. It was a feat that was really not thought possible on the console during that time period. It is quite exceptional really when you think about it. It's definitely one of my favourite racers on the system, and even looking back, I had owned the previous versions of the Wipeout games. The first game I owned 2097. I did own Wipeout 3. Now, I never owned the Special Edition myself back in the day. Mind you, there was many times when I did want to buy it, but I just never got round to it. But I seen and heard people that I knew that had played it, and everybody raved about it. Like, I've never heard or witnessed someone that hasn't played the Special Edition and not loved it, because it literally epitomises everything great about the Wipeout series. and the fact is that it includes all of the visual elements and tracks from the original games is definitely a win-win. But in saying that, while I do love the games, my personal favourite would be the second one. Now I know it's not as graphically superior compared to the final two games on the system, but it was a really good nostalgic element to it with the visuals that were there. Like, it was still a great looking game for what was an offer, and it really suited the tone, the futuristic vibe in which it was going for. Plus, in my personal opinion, out of all of the 4 games that were released on the PS1, Wipeout 2097 for me has the best soundtrack. Now I know other people may differ with that, but for my personal opinion it was the best in that regard. But it doesn't take away from the later games. Wipeout 3 and even the special edition are absolutely phenomenal. And even going back to recording content for this video, getting the chance to play all of the original tracks but with updated graphics, it was definitely a different experience, and for all intents and purposes. Like, you remember the layouts of all of the tracks from especially the first 2 games, but graphically they're just different and they're far superior. Yes, Wipeout 2097 especially, there is a notable difference because the graphics are definitely darker in its visual presence compared to Wipeout 3. Wipeout 3 is definitely much more brighter and vibrant, but it still has a very unique appeal to it. They're just all iconic games, like, I can't fault them, and you could definitely see the progression with each of them as they improved the gameplay mechanics, the visuals, the controls, the collision detection, pretty much everything. The games just excelled with each version, and it's just an iconic series. And while I do love 2097 and it is my personal favourite game in the series, I can't deny that the Wipeout 3 Special Edition is the best version because it includes everything that was seen before it. And even having played future Wipeout games on later consoles, I can't fault the PS1 games. The PS1 games are the ones I would go back to play quicker than any of the other games in the series, without a doubt. I wouldn't even think twice about it. They're just an incredible selection of games, and in many ways Wipeout 3 Special Edition is a fitting way to end the legacy on the console that started it all. So it's just an iconic classic that you have to play. If you haven't played it, I highly recommend that you do, or even if you're a fan, go back and revisit it. You will not be disappointed. It's such a fantastic game. I will have to cover another video at a later stage where we look at the comparisons between Wipeout 3 versus the Special Edition, and we can look at the differences between the two, so I will make a video with that at some point. But regardless, I would love to know your thoughts on Wipeout 3 Special Edition for the PlayStation, and what do you think of it overall? Is it your favourite Wipeout game in the series, and do you think it's the best game overall on the PS1 with regards to all of the previous games? I would love to know your thoughts on this iconic game, so be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you would like to see more content around other types of futuristic racers that are very similar to the likes of Wipeout that were also released on the PS1, then check out the playlist on screen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.
Engaged. Disengaging. Autopilot. Engaged. Disengaging.